and they can chronicle the change of the waterfowl that was using Sandusky Bay as the water quality deteriorated. And that was directly related to how fast the Black Swamp was being cleared and drained. So Ohio has been like kind of front and center on wetland loss in a long time. But here in northeastern Ohio, I came to really appreciate and do a little bit of work when I was at Lake Metroparks on the significance, and then also at Lucas County, the significance of Lake Erie. Now Lake Erie is the smallest of the Great Lakes. It's the most productive freshwater fishery in the world. There are more charter boat captains working on Lake Erie than the other Great Lakes combined. Okay. But with the walleye fishing that's been off the charts this year, there's a wonderful book called Fishes of Ohio. It was written by a guy named Milt Troutman, and I had the chance to meet Milt on a couple of occasions. And it was in '86. Ohio's targeted rate of catch for Lake Erie was supposed to be 4 million fish, 4 to 6 million fish. And I asked Milt, about those catch rates and were they sustainable. And he said something like, the opening day of the commercial fishery season in 1936, there was more than that caught opening day. So there's been these tremendous shifts and changes in the world around us. And we have these relics of these unique habitats around Ohio. And one of the more fascinating ones that I came to appreciate later on was the grasslands. And I grew up playing in meadows and abandoned farm fields and whatnot, and I knew that they were, great habitat for rabbits and pheasants and quails and things like that. But it was a little bit later in my career, right before I left Greene County, when I started appreciating little relics like the Selma Prairie along State Route 42. And we would go out and we would collect, blue stem and rattlesnake master and a few other prairie plants, and we would try to propagate them in some of the areas in Greene County. And in Lucas County, they have a native plant nursery over there that's producing 3,200 pounds of prairie grasses a year and over 3,500 pounds of prairie forbs a year, all native plants, that they're using to restore prairies over there. It's a really remarkable program. Some of these things that I was beginning to realize that have value and that were connecting people in my life and enriching my life, I became aware of folks that were trying to quantify these values, put dollars and cents on them. And with Lake Erie, when the Cuyahoga River caught on fire, Lake Erie burned. Okay. And the fish populations plummeted. And Dr. Seuss, and one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish, referred to Lake Erie in the first edition as the place where fish go to die. Oh yeah, that's true. He later changed that. But people in Ohio started to realize that there were economic values associated with us. And I started trying to do some research, and I came across some studies, like there was a fellow down in Louisiana that tried to put the value on an estuary down there for shrimp production. There were timber folks, if you go back to the beginning of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and National Forest Service, Pinchot tried to take and quantify the value in dollars and cents of timber production with well-managed woodlots. But one of the first things that I came across, and this was relatively recent, there's a magnificent book called The Extermination of the American Bison by a fellow named Hornady, who was the taxidermist for the Smithsonian. And he, in the book, goes to great lengths talking about the economic value of American bison as opposed to the efforts to propagate cattle on these same grasslands and sagelands. And you get that, and the book was written, I think, in 1867. So you get this feeling like this guy is really remorseful that he recognized that we didn't get it right. But it was too late at that particular point. So I started getting a greater sense of appreciation on how to communicate about the value of habitats. But there was something else about open space that was intriguing to me. I would get these phone calls throughout my career, I got phone calls like this. They go something like this. Hello, I'm driving down State Route 608 the other day, and I see that the park system is cutting down those trees. I'm going, well, I'm sorry, ma'am, we're not cutting down any trees. Oh yeah, you are. You don't lie to me. Don't cover this stuff. I'm going like, no, we're not cutting down any trees. Where are you talking about? She'd be very specific. She'd describe the location to me, and I'd say, well, the park doesn't own that property. Oh, I've lived here for 15 years. I drove by that every day on my way to work. I always thought that was the Metroparks. I said, no, I'm sorry. That's not the Metroparks. That's a private, piece of property. Well, what's going on there? Well, I believe that they're putting in a subdivision. Oh, you can't let that happen. Can you buy that? And so I shared that story to a really dear friend of mine who's a professor emeritus at Texas A&M, Dr. John Crompton. John and I were sitting at a conference together during a keynote presentation in Kansas City, and I was talking to him about this phenomenon. John had made a tremendous reputation for himself as an educator, doing calculations on economic impacts of recreational activities, rec centers, soccer tournaments, things like that. And I told him, I said, that stuff is smoke and mirrors to me. I mean, I don't get it. But we need somebody that's got your kind of credibility to do something on the existence value of open space. And he says, what do you mean the existence value of open space? Well, I just read a book by an economist named Hazel Henderson. And she talked, the name of the book is The Economics of a Solar Age. And she talked about the Maasai in Africa. They would do these limited safaris, and they would get $100,000 to allow somebody to come in and shoot one of their lions. And they put it together that they could have 5 photo safaris for $20,000 each, and at the end of the season still have their lion. And so Hazel was calling this the existence value of that lion. What was it worth alive versus dead? And so I shared that story with John, and literally a few months later, he published a book on the existence value of open space, the proximity effect, he called it, of open space on real estate values. This was a big deal, okay? Because suddenly we were able to take and say, you don't have to be committed to wildlife, you don't have to be committed to, habitat protection. There's some economic impacts associated with this stuff too. And he did the coolest thing. He did studies across the country where he would look at a significant natural area, and he would look at the county auditor's records, the tax duplicate associated with properties, residents within 500, 1,000, and 1,500 feet of that open space. And he was able to consistently demonstrate that the properties within 500 feet were worth as much as 15% more than properties further than 1,500 feet away. And he did it over and over and again. And matter of fact, when we were in Lake Metroparks, when I was at Lake Metroparks, I was able to get a grant from the Cleveland Foundation, the Gun Foundation of Madison, to do that same study on a couple parcels that we had in Lake County, and it bore out as true in Lake County as well. John went on to develop his models to such a sophisticated level that he and the folks from Trust for Public Lands, they bonded a $10 or $15 million initiative, bonded it off of the economics that would be generated if the city of Houston created some urban open spaces. They put together the model, the city says, here's the check. Yeah?
Did they factor in medical costs?
Oh, this is a wonderful thing. You're talking about the offset of medical costs? We're getting to that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So this real estate thing was a big deal. Hey, there we are. You can keep scrolling right down until you see a really cute deer. All of this stuff about habitat, in the technical terms, we refer to that as ecological services, because the public has come to recognize that there's a sophisticated balance between natural systems and life as we know it. We know that clean air, clean water is essential for life as we know it. Okay? And so there's some hard relationships there. this stuff associated with real estate, that's a neat, hard relationship as well. And here's what some of John's models, you can advance that a couple times. And here's what his proximity effect looks like if you were going to put it as a diagram, you know, it's like a bullseye. And you keep on going right on down, we got some stuff to do. And one more. Now, yeah, this is a fascinating little graph, and I'll send you any of this information if you want. But one of the things that John did is he did large high quality natural area parks, small high quality natural area parks, large and